Have you ever imagined what it would be like to say goodbye to a loved one at home, suddenly and without warning? And if that moment came, how would you want to let them go? Just thinking about what to do, whom to call, and where to start can feel overwhelming. No matter how prepared we think we are, when that moment actually arrives, our minds often go blank, especially when it's unexpected. I'm a 68-year-old emergency physician nearing retirement. For nearly 40 years, I've witnessed countless final moments, and yet even now, I still go to the hospital every day to care for patients. People often ask, at your age, you're still working in the ER? Yes. But I don't continue just to practice medicine. I continue because I want to offer practical help and guidance to people during their hardest moments. What I'm about to share today is something no one teaches in medical school, and no hospital guidebook covers it, yet everyone should know it. This isn't about medical knowledge, but about real-life wisdom. It's about what to do when someone passes away at home. It's something everyone someday will need to understand. Have you ever felt afraid, just imagining what you'd do if that moment came? Unsure what documents are needed, who to call, or what legal procedures must be followed? That quiet fear tends to sit at the back of our minds. Today, I want to help ease that fear. Using my own experiences and medical expertise, I'll give you practical, real advice so that when the time comes, you're not completely lost. When I was younger, a member of my own family passed away suddenly at home. Even though I was already a doctor, in that moment, I was too scared to even dial 119. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold the phone. Despite all my medical training, I didn't know what needed to happen next. I had learned how to save lives, but no one had ever taught me what to do after a life ends. Like most doctors, I was trained only in how to preserve life, not how to let go. I had practiced CPR hundreds of times, but never once learned the administrative steps following a death. I still remember the confusion and helplessness of that experience. I wandered aimlessly, unaware of the importance of even a single sheet of paper. The emotional weight of that moment still lingers in my heart today. Even as I was saying my final goodbye, I was scrambling to understand the procedures and couldn't give my loved one a proper farewell. I didn't know I needed a death certificate or who was supposed to issue it. I had no idea who to contact at the funeral home or how the process worked, and if I, a physician, struggled this much, how much harder must it be for someone without any medical knowledge? If this were to happen to you, where would you begin? Just the thought of it is confusing and terrifying, isn't it? I believe most people would feel as lost as I did. But if you prepare in advance and know what to expect, that devastating moment can become just a bit more manageable. From that day on, I made a promise to myself. One day, I would share this story, not just as a doctor, but as someone who has lived it. Ever since, even as I continued to care for patients in the ER, this thought stayed with me. How can I help more people understand what to do? Even if no one teaches us, we still need to know, so that we can say goodbye to those we love with dignity, and so the family left behind doesn't have to suffer more regret. For years now, I've quietly passed this information on to families I met in the ER, information that isn't part of any official training, but is incredibly important in real life. Whenever families asked, "What do we do now?" I explained everything: what steps to follow, what documents to prepare, and how to move forward. Every time, they would let out a sigh of relief. And every time I was reminded how valuable this knowledge really is. This is the first time I'm publicly sharing what I've always hesitated to say in lectures or at the hospital. It may be more practical than medical, and maybe even more important. What I'm sharing comes from experience. This isn't just a list of steps. It's heartfelt advice earned over a lifetime. This is the kind of story you need to hear through to the end to truly grasp its importance. And if you find it helpful, I'd appreciate your support. Subscribe, like, or share so that this vital information can reach more people. Your small gesture could make a big difference. Let's prepare together so that when that difficult moment comes, you're not completely overwhelmed. Step 1. Even if someone passes away at home, you must report it to 119. This is a basic but critical step that many people overlook. Just because someone dies at home, it doesn't mean you can immediately call the funeral home. Doing so can lead to serious legal and procedural complications. Why is it necessary to call 119? Because a death that occurs at home is classified as a non-hospital death, which requires official confirmation by law. The 119th Emergency Response Team must come to verify the death. If you skip this step, it can become difficult or even impossible to obtain an official death certificate later. Worse, it may result in legal investigations. I remember a case involving Mr. Kim Yong-ho. When his mother passed away at home, he immediately contacted a funeral home without calling 119 first. Because there was no official death confirmation, he couldn't obtain a death certificate. As a result, he couldn't proceed with the funeral and was eventually investigated by the police. He suffered not because of wrongdoing, but because he didn't know the proper procedure. Another recent case involved Ms. Choi Jung-yeon. When her 92-year-old father passed away in his sleep, she assumed it was a natural death due to old age. She called the funeral home directly, but they refused to collect the body without a death certificate. The confusion that followed delayed the funeral for 3 days. Later, she found out that official confirmation through 119 was absolutely necessary. When calling 119, stay as calm as possible and clearly report your address and the situation. Say something like, "A family member is unresponsive and not breathing." When the paramedics arrive, provide them with relevant information, such as any pre-existing medical conditions or medications the person was taking. These details help with the death confirmation and the next steps. After you make the call, the emergency team will perform standard procedures to confirm the death. They may attempt resuscitation or use an ECG monitor to confirm cardiac arrest. If the deceased had a known illness, having the attending physician's contact information or the name of the hospital where they received care can be extremely helpful. The paramedics will use this information to confirm the death and guide you through the next necessary steps. Please remember this critical warning. If you proceed with funeral arrangements without an official report and confirmation, it could be considered illegal. Even if the deceased was elderly or had been battling an illness for a long time, an official death confirmation is a legal and respectful necessity for the deceased and for the protection of their family. It is especially vital when the death is sudden or not linked to a chronic illness, as determining the exact cause is more important in such cases. Think about this. If someone in your family passed away, what would be the very first thing you'd do? Could you act clearly and decisively? Perhaps it's time to have this conversation with your loved ones. Just talking about it in advance can greatly reduce the confusion and fear when the time comes. Step 2. A death certificate must be issued by a licensed physician. Just because the 119 emergency team confirms the death does not mean the process is complete. Paramedics are not physicians and cannot legally issue a death certificate. Only a licensed medical doctor can do that, and their diagnosis and signature are legally binding. There are 2 types of death certificates: the standard death certificate, issued by a physician who treated the patient; the post-mortem examination certificate, issued by a physician after inspecting the body post-death. If the deceased had a regular doctor, you might be able to obtain a standard death certificate. If not, or if the doctor is unavailable, a doctor will need to come following your 119 call, or the body may need to be transported to a hospital emergency room for post-mortem inspection and documentation. This document is essential. It is the foundation for all subsequent steps: transporting the body to a funeral home, filing the death report, claiming insurance, inheritance procedures, and more. It must be filled out accurately, listing the cause of death, time, and place. Let me give you a real example. Mrs. Park Myung-ja, a patient of one of my colleagues, lost her husband suddenly at home. Because he had no recent medical records at any hospital, obtaining a death certificate became incredibly difficult. In the end, she was subjected to a police investigation and even had to go through an autopsy. If he had had a regular doctor and consistent medical records, all of that could have been avoided. In another case, Mr. Lee Jong-hak's mother passed away and he attempted to get a death certificate from the neighborhood Korean medicine clinic where she had recently received treatment. But they refused. That's because Korean medicine doctors are only permitted to issue death certificates under very limited and specific circumstances. As a result, Mr. Lee had to transport the body to a large hospital ER, where a physician could perform a post-mortem exam and issue a proper document. This cost him an extra day, an incredibly stressful delay. Here's a practical tip. If someone in your family has a chronic illness, always maintain open communication with their primary care doctor. Store the doctor's contact information on your phone and ensure there are up-to-date medical records. If someone passes away at home, reach out to the physician who treated them and ask whether they can issue the death certificate. If they can't, or if there's no regular physician, use the 119 process to have a qualified doctor assess the situation, and never, under any circumstances, move the body to a funeral home before obtaining the death certificate. Some funeral homes might say they can accept the body without one, but doing so is illegal and will only cause major problems later. Always follow the legal process. Also, you'll need multiple original copies of the death certificate. I recommend requesting at least 5 to 10 copies when it's issued. These will be required for everything from life insurance claims and pensions to managing property and legal affairs. One copy is never enough. Now ask yourself, could you find your family doctor's contact information right now? If not, why not take this moment to gather and organize that info for every member of your household? This small act of preparation could make a huge difference. Step 3. When choosing a funeral home, prioritize time and distance. Many people, when faced with this decision, consider price, size, or reputation first. These are valid factors, but the most critical considerations are how quickly you can get there and how far it is from your home. Why? Because after death, the condition of the body begins to change, and this happens faster in the summer or in winter when the heating is on. For the sake of dignity and preserving your loved one's appearance, swift transport is essential. If the funeral home is far away, it can introduce risks and complications. I've seen cases in the ER where transport took 2 hours or more, and by the time the family arrived, the condition of the body had deteriorated significantly. The grief in those moments is magnified by regret. Regret that could have been avoided with better planning. Let me share one such example. Last summer, I met Mr. Seo Jin-woo. After his mother passed away, he decided to transport her to their rural hometown, a 3-hour drive away. By the time they arrived, the condition of the body had worsened dramatically due to the heat. It was heartbreaking, and the family's sorrow only deepened. Another thing to keep in mind is the funeral home's ability to properly refrigerate the body. Not all facilities are equal. Small funeral homes may lack adequate or modern refrigeration systems, which can lead to serious difficulties. Whenever possible, choose a funeral facility within a large hospital or one known for having updated equipment. Here's another tip. Identify 2 funeral homes near where your family lives and keep a note of their contact details, location, and basic pricing. This can be a huge help in an emergency. If your family has specific religious needs, confirm in advance whether the facility can accommodate them. Funeral costs vary widely depending on region and services, but basic expenses usually fall between 3 million to 5 million won. Understand the cost range ahead of time, so there are no surprises. You'll also need mourning clothes, floral arrangements, a memorial portrait, items often offered in funeral packages, but with widely varying prices. Before signing a contract, clearly identify which services are included and which will cost extra. Important reminder, you must book both the funeral venue and the crematorium at the same time. In cities, crematoriums are often fully booked, and if you secure only the funeral space but not the cremation slot, the entire schedule may be disrupted. Fortunately, many funeral homes now offer crematorium reservation services. Make use of these. If you haven't yet identified a funeral home, why not start now? A simple online search or asking trusted friends or neighbors can provide useful leads. Preparing in advance can later bring great comfort. Step 4. Start the death registration and estate settlement process as soon as possible. In the deep sorrow of losing someone you love, the last thing you want to think about is paperwork. But unfortunately, administrative procedures don't wait for our grief to subside. In fact, the longer you delay, the more complications can arise. Legally, a death must be reported within 1 month of the date of passing. But in reality, it's best to start the process as early as possible. Why? Because from that moment onward, many systems begin to activate: utility bills, insurance, pensions, bank accounts. If the deceased had automatic withdrawals or recurring charges under their name, time is of the essence. Let me tell you about Ms. Lee Jung-suk, a woman I met in the ER. After her husband died, she postponed filing the death report. She didn't cancel automatic payments or request a debt inquiry. As a result, she unknowingly accumulated hundreds of thousands of won in debt, just because she wasn't aware of the steps she needed to take. This kind of case is far too common. I've witnessed it many times during my years in the ER. Here's a practical tip. After filing the death report, immediately apply for the Inheritance Property Inquiry Service. This can be done at your local administrative office and will give you a complete overview of the deceased's assets and liabilities, including bank accounts, insurance, stocks, and outstanding loans. It helps prevent unexpected financial shocks later on. Next, contact all utility companies, electric, water, gas, internet, and the mobile phone provider to cancel or transfer any services. These don't cancel themselves. Each one requires direct action. And here's something critical to remember. If you find out that the deceased had significant debts, you must consider limited acceptance or renunciation of inheritance. These are legal processes that can protect you from inheriting someone else's debt. But there's a strict timeline. You must complete these steps within 3 months of becoming aware of the death. This isn't a process you can afford to delay. Since these matters involve legal implications, don't hesitate to seek professional help if needed. A legal advisor or a notary familiar with inheritance law can make all the difference. Right now, can you think of any automatic payments that are still being withdrawn under a deceased family member's name? If so, take a moment to sit down with a family member and go through your respective auto payment lists. Just 30 minutes of attention now could save you months of trouble later. In sharing this story today, my deepest hope is that those of us who must carry on can do so in peace, even in the midst of grief. That's why I've shared these difficult but essential steps. Let's review them briefly. 1. Call 119 immediately if someone passes away at home. 2. Obtain a legally issued death certificate from a physician. 3. Choose a funeral home based on proximity and time, not just price or reputation. 4. Begin the death registration and estate handling as early as possible. 5. Prepare emotionally and administratively to navigate the process with calm and clarity. And above all, remember this: being prepared is not morbid. It's a profound act of love. It is respect for the one who has passed and protection for those who remain. In my 40 years of practicing emergency medicine, I've witnessed the fragility of life and the power of preparation. My experience, I hope, can be a small light in someone else's darkest moment. What will you begin to prepare today? Even something as small as a family conversation can be a meaningful first step. Though this may be an uncomfortable topic, from experience, I can assure you, it's a conversation you'll never regret having. Start now. It's never too late. And in our next video, I'll share 3 crucial points you must never overlook at a funeral home, the most common issues that arise, and how to solve them. Please stay tuned. Thank you for watching until the end.